Good morning. My name is David. Welcome to week 32 of 52 churches in 52 weeks. If you're new here, premise of this channel is this is a one-year spiritual challenge as we attend a new church each week. So if you want to help out the channel, hit the like button and subscribe. You can also check out Instagram for all kinds of stuff there. And I did this 8 years ago and wrote a book. It's no substitute for scripture, but if you want to read about it on Amazon, I'll put all the info below. So we're in the middle of December, so we're in the full swing of the holiday season. And if you walk to any type of grocery store or retail store, you may notice volunteers who are donning these red aprons. They're chiming the bells. And you also will see them standing in front of this red kettle with a Salvation Army logo. And I think a lot of people know with the Salvation Army, it's an amazing organization that helps the poor and the needy and just provides all types of different social services. But I don't think a lot of people know, and I wasn't aware for a long time, is the Salvation Army is also a church. It's an interdenominational church. So they work with churches, not necessarily against them in this kind of denominational thing. So you may be from a Catholic church, a Protestant church, a Latter-day Saint church, and all these churches will work with the Salvation Army. When I started doing 52 and 52, the current round, I had a Facebook group with a lot of Christian writers, and I asked them, what kind of denomination would you be most intrigued to hear about a visit? And to my surprise, the Salvation Army ranked as the #1 requested church body to attend. So this past Sunday during this hustle bustle season, I wanted to see how the Salvation Army does a Sunday morning church service. So we'll give you just a real brief sample of what it was like during worship, and I'll be back in a moment with some thoughts from this visit.
Go tell it on the mountain. Here we go. Stand up on this one. Yeah, stand up. Let me get it. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain, that Jesus Christ is Lord. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain, that Jesus Christ is Lord. Shepherds gather watching, or silent flocks by night. Behold, throughout the heavens, there shone a holy light. Go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain, that Jesus Christ is Lord.
So in previous videos, I've mentioned some strange items I've walked out of church as a first-time visitor. And this was certainly the case with this visit. And I'll mention a little bit more what I received towards the later part of this video. But I want to go into what the service was like, and then also a little bit on the history of the Salvation Army. I didn't know how many buildings the Salvation Army may have in real estate around a city. So the one that I visited, there were 3 or 4 different buildings from what I could tell. And I thought it was, so I went where I saw the Salvation Army logo, and it was actually a rehab building. So I rang the bell, I waited for somebody, and nobody opened the door, so it kind of hit me, well, maybe I need to go to this building. And as I learned, it was the Core Community Center. So the Salvation Army, usually the churches are named cores. And that's one of the things I started learning about some of the quirks that the Salvation Army has. Because they don't have pastors, they have captains, they have officers. Their CEO is actually called a general. So they keep these militant rankings, mainly from tradition, but they keep it to this day. So I'll get more into that in a little bit as well. When I actually met somebody, a captain came up to me and she kind of directed me straight into where the service was going to be held. And she asked me my name, and I said David. And she's like, oh yeah, well, the captain's name is David, and we also have a regular name David, so you'll be the 3rd David. And as I learned, about 15 people were part of this church congregation. So 20% of the church was named David. So that made me laugh a little bit. So we started service and met the captain, Captain David. And what I didn't know is with the captain, the head of the core building, just they are kind of like a one-man church service themselves. So not only was the captain doing PowerPoint slides for the music, he also was pressing buttons for the background music. He was hitting a tambourine, and he was also getting people riled up and ready to worship, in addition to leading the sermon and doing everything with the kettles and organizing and even leading the Bible study. So like the captains, the officers in the Salvation Army, like salute to you, because I can't believe the amount of preparation and work that this particular captain did to make this service happen. So we sang just some traditional type of hymns, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and Go Tell It on the Mountain. And I think we also sang another song I never really had heard much in the past. It was familiar, but I didn't know the lyrics to it. I think it was called Unto Us. One thing with the Salvation Army that I absolutely adored was the captain asked everyone to shout out prayers of joy. And this wasn't anything major. Like, you didn't have to give this whole speech or anything. You just shouted out what you were thankful for and what you found joy in. And one of the Davids, he was in a wheelchair. He said, like, I am so thankful for the Salvation Army. And I was just like, wow, he has found so much peace and so much community from the Salvation Army with how they reach out to the poor and the needy. And that just really hit home to me. And everyone kind of went around the congregation, said a few words. I also just said, hey, I'm thankful for visiting as a newcomer. And a lot of the members, and I guess they're called soldiers, just shouted out amen when I said that. And immediately you could tell, like, with the Salvation Army, like, this is a very good uplifting type of church body to be a part of. The captain got up, and with the Salvation Army, if you're not familiar, like, they're wearing the full military outfits that are specifically designed for the Salvation Army with these little emblems on the collar. And the captain gave a sermon, and I was thinking, I've been to Catholic churches, I've been to Episcopal churches, and sometimes the sermons, like, they're not, I guess with the Catholic churches, they call them homilies. So that they're not very long, maybe about 10 minutes or so. So with everything the Salvation Army does, I wasn't expecting a very elaborate or long type of sermon. But no, the captain spoke for about 30 minutes, and he delivered a really, really good sermon. So I've just found that really, really intriguing. After service, the captain invited me to attend one of their Bible studies. And I accepted the invitation and took a seat. And they were doing this video series called 'Tis the Season. So we watched this video, I'd say about 15 minutes, and then we all had handouts of this piece of paper with a bunch of questions. And the question really, the top question that they focused on was, think about the most memorable Christmas present that you ever received. And like, as a kid, like, I remember, like, I got this G.I. Joe kind of set. It had like this 3-tank kind of thing to it. I was just so excited when I got it. But the more I thought about it, the more it just made me remember relatives, and especially an aunt. And this last Christmas was the first Christmas that we couldn't celebrate with her, unfortunately, due to passing away. And that's all I could think about, because she would every year, it didn't matter if we were kids or we were grown adults, she would always gift us this candy and just these little items. It wasn't anything fancy. But I was talking to my brother afterwards about it, and like, we're talking, and it was just like, it didn't matter how old we were, it's just that she was thinking about us. And to us, that just really hit home. And when I read that question, and even now, just thinking about it with the holidays and Christmas just a few weeks away, like, it's those that have passed away where you remember how much that they would self-sacrifice and what they would gift you that really humbles you. And they always say, Christ is the reason for the season. Christ is the reason that we can see those loved ones again in eternity. So that it just, the way that question, it was so simple, but it just kind of weaved its way into something that was just so much more impactful. After everything had wrapped up, I was trying to take a few pictures before I left, and one of the ladies who actually did a few guitar solos up front, she asked if I would like a baking cookie sheet. And I'd mentioned, it's like, I can't bake anything. Like, I can barely make toast. Like, I'm probably not going to be good with that. But she insisted, and then it just kind of got me thinking. That was a terrible, there we go. It got me thinking about just some of the stranger items that I've received from visiting these churches. So I'm like, all right, well, yeah, maybe if you're offering, sure, I'll take the baking sheet. Maybe I can make it into a present. So we went into this gym, and the captain, she wasn't going to give me just a baking sheet. She gave me this bag of baking supplies for cookies. And someone else was talking, so I couldn't really understand why I was getting all of this baking materials. But when I got home, it's like, sure enough, there were sprinkles, there was this pack of sugar, cookie cutters, and everything. I think that the captain asked me what my local core was. And at the time, I didn't know a core meant kind of your local Salvation Army church. So I walked out with all this baking cookie stuff, and I guess I'm going to try and bake cookies after this visit. So I don't think they'll turn out good, but they did leave instructions in how to do it, so maybe that'll help. So you may be wondering, where did the Salvation Army come from? So in the 1860s, William and Catherine Booth founded it in London. And William was a Methodist preacher, but he wanted to do more for the poor and the needy. So he wanted the church to reach out to the poor as opposed to the poor coming to church. So that ruffled some feathers, and eventually he left and started doing his ministry. Well, the years went by, and I guess he kind of found them to be like this volunteer army. So as he was writing out his Christian mission statement, the secretary objected, and he's like, I am not a volunteer. Like, I'm a regular here. So they crossed off the word volunteer and they wrote Salvation. And Salvation Army, that stuck. And they eventually reorganized where they had military rankings. So William Booth was the first general, kind of like their CEO. And then they had captains and officers, and the congregation members were called soldiers. And they kind of figured, they're an army for God. With the Red Kettles, that's an interesting story, because in 1891, there was a captain named Joseph McPhee. And he was trying to figure out how to feed a lot of the poor in San Francisco. But he didn't know how to fund this project. So he got thinking about, in Liverpool, England, what they would do is something I want to say was called the Simpsons pot. So anyone that got off the ships would put like a coin or two to help the poor and needy. So he did that in San Francisco, and he wrote on the pot, keep the pot boiling, kind of almost like hot potato kind of thing, as people would get off ships. Well, that was able to help with the San Francisco feeding project, and that kind of symbolism, I guess, really kind of sparked throughout the United States and was able to reach Boston, and next thing you know, it's all over the world. That's going to wrap up week 32. Hope you enjoyed this week's visit to the Salvation Army. For next week, I already made the visit to Miraculous. This was a church that hosted a Broadway-like Christian musical. So that'll be an interesting video. But if you want to help support the channel, hit the like button and subscribe. But until next time, hope you have a good one.